About a year ago, I read a couple lines that were written by a teacher of mine named Adebayo Akomolafe. And when I read these lines, I didn't even fully conceive of what was written there. For sure, didn't conceive fully what was written there. But when I read it, there was this kind of existential thunderclap. There was this shaking of the ground on which I stood. And over the course of the year, I kept coming back to this and reading it. And every time I read it, more was revealed to me and more of my life changed, essentially. It changed the way that I saw the world, the way that I saw myself, the way that I saw what was possible, what was accessible to me. It turned me upside down, shook me. Lots of things that I knew for certain fell out of my pockets, rattled on the ground. So I'm going to share it with you, and I'm going to share what has unfolded for me. How I've made that, how I have taken those couple of lines, these couple of lines that I'm about to share with you, and I've created more freedom for me inwardly, which has allowed more love to move through me, which has then allowed me to be more impactful in the creation of my world, in my relationships, in my business. Just the start of one idea. Now, an idea itself doesn't do it. An existential thunderclap can come and can go. The thing that did it isn't the words, it's my being with the words over and over and over again. And so if in my sharing today, at any point, anything that I share, or anywhere you go and you're reading and you're listening, there's something that turns a light on or that twists you around, what I would invite you to do is to return to that over and over and over again, to not just look for learning through difference, but understanding through sameness. Adebayo wrote, "The fugitive cannot afford to speak truth to power. Marriage, the act of removing oneself from the control of the slave plantation, was not preceded by honesty or truth-telling, but creative deception and a refusal of the epistemological imperatives of the master." When I first read it, it shook me to the core because my core, my ground for my whole life has been honesty. Honesty, being straight. My dad was a cop. And when I was a little kid, if I did something wrong, that was bad. I would get in trouble. But if I lied about it, holy smokes, cleaning up my language, holy smokes, I'd be grounded. And so I learned at a young age that breaking the rules is not good, but lying about it is so much worse. And so honesty, really in the beginning through fear, became an extremely high value. If I wanted to be loved, I damn better well say the truth, tell the truth. And it just became a thing. And throughout my life, people would say, you're so honest. And as I grew up and I started to learn about personal development and self-reflection, I turned that high value for honesty, that attachment to honesty, we could even say, because there's a dark side to everything, inward. And that attachment to honesty inward became expressed as what people might call authenticity. And it has strength in it. And absolutely, I've leaned on that value my whole life. Thanks, Dad, for scaring the shit out of me of lying, because it made me need to be honest so much that it developed all these strengths. I can be straight with people. I can be straight with myself. In fact, I had to be for most of my life. And here's where this was starting to shake the ground. I didn't see until, 4 or 5 years ago, how this need to be honest, whilst a strength in so many areas, great for trust and relationships, great for self-inquiry and expression, honest expression, creates charisma, moves people, magnets people, love that, right? You can trust honesty. Great, so many strengths. But I started to reach the end, not the fact that I'm the most honest person, but the end of the fruit. So every strength is a weakness. And I started to bang up against this. And I started to bang up against it in the realm of creation through speaking. Because I started to come to understand throughout my career, my work, that it's literally all that is created through speaking. All of the, not that there's not something here, right? Like there's rocks on the ground, but the idea that they're rocks, rocksness is created through language. And if it wasn't the language of rocksness, then we wouldn't have crushed stone around our fire pit. Because it's a coming together of humans through conversation that creates possibility far greater than we had before language. It's a beautiful thing, I love it. And I started to understand the magic of casting spells through spelling out words. And abracadabra, I create as I speak, was on the door of my studio, and it's this whole awakening to the power of the spoken word and the creation of worlds through words. And I was enjoying that new power, that newfound, that magic. And then I came to a point at which I saw that my speaking was still happening within a containment of justifiable, honest speaking. I couldn't speak something as if it was when I could see circumstances or evidence contrary to that. I couldn't speak something that was if other people would say that's not true. So I couldn't speak something that wasn't until it was, if the speaking of wasn't true. And so truth was a limiter on my capacity to speak something into creation. The best I could do was to put it at future tense. One day I will be, or one day we will have. And the problem with one day we will is you experience it in the future. And you don't have the same embodied experience of it being alive now as you would as if you spoke the lie that something that isn't is. If you spoke the lie that I have millions of dollars. No, you don't. There's no evidence for that. That's not true. And I was beholden to truth, such that it was undermining my capacity to speak into creation. That's one piece. That's where I started to see the limit of this. And I was tussling with that, trying to, how do I meet this? How do I integrate these two things? How do I speak something that isn't as if it is, truthfully when it isn't true, in the sense of evidence and things that other people might point to, if we're going to measure it? How do I do that? And I was hanging with that inquiry. And then also, at the time I read this quote, the world is shifting, the world is changing. The pandemic, all of the rules being thrust upon us, people having yes or no, blue or red, left or right, Republican, conservative, pick a side. That was the story, pick a side. You can't be anywhere other than left or right. You have to pick a side. That's the epistemological narrative of the master. There are sides that you are on. And that felt like a prison to me. But I didn't know that that prison was actually a function of my attachment to truth, to honesty. And then I read Adebayo's quote. I'll say it again. The fugitive cannot afford to speak truth to power. Marriage, the act of removing oneself from the control of the slave plantation, was not preceded by honesty or truth-telling, but creative deception and a refusal of the epistemological imperatives of the master. So I saw epistemological imperatives being thrust upon the world from above. Those not that high, just over there, right? And so seeing epistemological imperatives be created, whilst at the same time diving deep into Nietzsche. Thus spoke Zarathustra, and learning about the evolution of the human spirit in Nietzsche's terms, from that of the camel who bears the burden of society and does the work, right? Not of the herd, but somebody says, yes, I will do the work. I will do what it takes to achieve in this world. It will be uncomfortable, but I'll do it. The camel then evolves into the lion when that camel is willing to say no to everything in society. And I was starting to look at the intersection between Nietzsche's ideas of no to the society and the personal development, spiritual development, psychological development ideas of forgiving yourself for your own personal judgment. I was seeing the intersect of the liberation of the liberation of the impersonal, which is society's ideas about what you should be, and the personal, which is your own judgments from your parenting, from your personal experience of what you should be. And realizing that it's all one liberation. Liberation from the personal ideas of what I need to be and what I'm not, because that would have me be loved based on my personal experience. And the impersonal ideas of what I must be, because that is the world that we live in. I must not throw stones because society says I shouldn't. And that's where it starts to get really dangerous. Really dangerous. To start to question ideas about society like that. Well, what if it's not true that I should throw stones? What if it's only an idea that I should not throw stones? There's a part of me that feels free and liberated when I think about that, but there's another part of me that's really scared about that. And what is that? The part that's scared about that is, who would I be if it was not all wrong for me to throw stones? Would I be a stone thrower? Would I throw stones at you if I were mad at you? I don't know. I'm afraid. But here's why. Why is that? Because I was taught to believe that my goodness, my not throwing stones, is the product of my following the rules. And that if I didn't have rules, if I wasn't beholden to social, cultural ideals and expectations and agreements, that I would be bad, that I would throw stones, that I wouldn't be able to be lovable, and that I would be ousted from the tribe, as they say in evolutionary psychology or whatever, right? That I would be alone, that I wouldn't have relationships, I'd just be doing bad things, I'd be self-interested. That's the story. But if I'm honest with myself, if I look at my experience of being alive and being in the world, what I find is a different story about my experience. In my experience, as I remove rules about who I need to be from my own personal judgments and experiences, and rules about who and what I need to be from the stories of the world that I've taken on, as I remove those, as I let those go, I find that I'm not actually more self-interested. I find that as I become more free, I experience more love. I don't have to try to be loving. The more free I am from ideas about what I should be, whether they're personal or impersonal, the more love moves through me. And guess what love does? It doesn't throw stones. It doesn't throw stones at people. I've never thrown a stone when I felt free. Fear throws stones. And fear builds ideas like throwing stones is wrong. Be afraid. Fear and fear, boom, locked out. The fugitive cannot afford to speak truth to power. Marriage, the act of removing oneself from the control of the slave plantation, was not preceded by honesty or truth-telling, but creative deception and a refusal of the epistemological imperatives of the master. Creative deception, there it was, right in the center of his little piece of writing. Creative deception, wow. Abracadabra, I create as I speak. Maybe all speaking that creates is a lie. Because if we speak what already is, there's no creation, there's only sustaining, maintaining. Maybe all creation is deception. Maybe in order to create, we must deceive. Maybe in order to create, we must lie. In order to create what is, we must speak what isn't until it is. And then it was like, holy smokes. What would it be like if I could give up telling the truth as primary? And again, the ground starts to shake. my heart starts to race because the fear of being a bad person comes online. So I have to ask myself, if I am no longer going to navigate my life in this world on truth, then what will be my compass? Because my compass has been what is truth. What is truth? And telling you, I'm definitely way over the top on that thing than most people. When having a kid, it was really hard for me to do the Santa Claus thing. I'm trying to find my way to articulate it such that I'm not lying, and it just doesn't land. Daddy, why can't I go outside naked? Well, because the man across the street might see you and get a hard penis and want to come over and put it inside you. Like, why did I say that? That's not healthy, right? There's a place in which honesty is no longer useful and functional. So it has its cost. And you could say it's about balancing, and I think you're probably right if you were to say that. It's not being honest all the time, but I'm kind of Immanuel Kantish when it comes to these things. I think it was Kant's imperative, it was. That if you're going to stand for something, it must be something you can stand for across all situations. And so, whilst I could not be honest all the time, I didn't want to not be honest all the time because some ideal that I had just didn't fit. I have to find another way where I can have an ideal and a value that can be expressed across all contexts and all situations. And so if I'm going to give up truth as my compass and honesty as my compass, what must it be? What will it be? And as I sat with the understanding that what I'm actually afraid of is being an unlovable person, losing connection, being ousted from the tribe. That's why I'm beholden to the value of truth, actually, from my dad all the way up throughout my life, society. It's not really about being honest. Honesty has always been a path to lovability. And so the step I take, if I'm going to let truth go as my compass and honesty go as my compass, what I will follow is love. Because I got to have a compass. I don't want to just be pure chaos. And it seems to me that if love is my compass, instead of truth, instead of honesty, then I end up not being that different than I was before. Because these two things typically are very often aligned. But here's the thing, not always. At the place where truth as a strength hit its limits, I could keep going. And I could have love be primary. And it's very easy to see this exemplified with your children. When I come from love, most of the time I tell my son the truth. And sometimes that love is a blatant lie. Or if you were standing there next to me, you see me look him in the eyes with love in my heart, telling him total bullshit. Because that's what creates the peace at the level of understanding that he has. And I want him to be at peace. And I want him to learn the things that he learns at the stages at which it's most useful for him, and take that out and extrapolate it across your whole life. What would it be like to walk out into the world, to take off whatever mask you are wearing to protect you from being ousted by society, to protect you from not being loved, and to just be who you are from love, and let love guide you in every decision that you make and every action that you take? Is this in the highest good of all involved? My mentor Steve said to me once. What if that were your compass? And that's got a similar quality to it. What would love do? There's like the what would Jesus do thing. What would love do? Whatever represents love for you. What would Buddha do? What would my intuition do? Find something more deep and powerful and important and potent and true than truth. Find something more real than honesty within you. That's what I've done. And through that, I have found that lying can be liberating. That love is actually, for me, a more noble compass than honesty and truth. And in that, I am, number one, more liberated because I am no longer beholden to the epistemological imperatives of any master, be it the one inside my head or any in the world. I am empowered with the tool of creative deception not with some overhanging guilt that I'm being wrong or a bad person. I'm not choosing between the two options you give that either make me a good or bad person. I'm creating a new parallel path, a third option in the very least, in the construction of an alternate world. I'm a yes to that. And I speak it into creation. And I am grounded in that speaking. I am not immoral. I am speaking and creating a new truth. And I'm trusting in love, something deeper than what is or what isn't. I love you so much. Thank you for being with me. Thank you for listening. Thank you for all that you create. I'll talk to you soon.